Hopefully that's working. So my name's Rohan Burgess. I'm just going to review the component of the project I was involved in was looking at the chemical control side of things. So a big part of the project was looking at the control options they use overseas to manage leaf miners and try to work out which of those control options might be suitable for use in Australia. So I suppose we looked at it through the lens of understanding that overseas, these Liriomyza are quite good at developing resistance to different modes of action, chemical groups. We're also looking at the efficacy of the chemical, which sort of relates back to the first point, I suppose. And we're also looking quite strongly at the potential of chemicals to disrupt parasitoids, because as Elia has shown in her talk, we know from experience overseas that if you take out too many of the beneficials, we can actually make the pest a lot worse. So when choosing chemicals, it's not just as simple as spraying broad spectrum contact insecticides. You want to make sure that you're actually penetrating the leaf surface to get at the larva. So we're looking at systemics and translaminar mechanisms. So a big part of the choosing of chemicals is to look at the toxicity to the beneficial wasps. And it's not just about what we're applying for the leaf miner. We've got to also, now that unfortunately the leaf miner has arrived in Australia, we've got to think about the chemicals we're using to manage any pest on the crop, because we don't want to make the leaf miner become a significant issue because we're interacting and damaging the sort of existing IPM systems that are there. So we know that some chemicals like the organophosphates and things like that are more damaging towards the beneficials than things like ivermectin, and that's spinotrem, things that are sort of in the middle, versus some of the newer chemistry like cyanotranoprol, chromazine, etc. And some of those we actually have permits for now. So I thought I'd just show this table. The main points from this is that under the chemical column, we've got chemicals used overseas that are labelled for the control of leaf miner. A bit of a summary of the efficacy against different life stages of the leaf miner, and that's reflecting back to, just different life stages are more susceptible than others. We noted the toxicity towards some of the key beneficial insects. And we've also looked at their use pattern across a range of crop types in Australia that are hosts of leaf miner. And we've used sort of this mapping out process to identify a variety of options. So currently, I think, unless something else has come online that I've missed since I last updated the table, this is the state of play for control options for Liriomyza in Australia. Several of these chemical packages were developed through the project, and as I think Maddie or Zamin mentioned earlier, we've submitted some packages to APV, to Hort Innovation, to then submit to the APVMA later on in the for leaf miner control. So the key points, I suppose, from this table are most of the main crops that Liriomyza affect are covered by at least 1 or 2 or 3 modes of action, and would be recommending control option to rotate between those modes of action where possible, following the labels and permits, obviously. Should note that the current chromazine permit has some limitations on leafy vegetables and brassica vegetables, in that some of those crop types have to be destroyed after treatment, so they'll only be for an eradication. And now that we're moving into this management phase, we'll have to use them with a bit of care. And I imagine next step would be to update those permits to just make it a bit more easy for people when they go to a management phase. But they were written for an eradication perspective originally. So I think that's the main points I want to cover there, is that we've got a number of modes of action, and we've selected chemicals that are fairly, at least gentler than some options for the beneficials. So in the interest of time, I'll just run through a quick summary. So the key part is we want to try and protect the beneficials as much as we can, and that just means selecting chemicals that are as least disruptive as possible. Ideally, you want to rotate between your mode of action groups because at the moment we still don't know exactly what resistance potential exists in the Australian population. So it's something we'll have to look at now that the pest is here, and I understand a bit and develop thresholds and all the rest of it goes with that. But I think this project has given us a good start. I should also note that if you want more information on the project, there's the AusVeg website has a link to it. And the New South Wales DPI website has a good summary of the current state of play of permits. And that's probably something that any growers in the room should familiarise themselves with. So I think that's all from me. Now I'll hand you over to Peter.